And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta independence, broadcasting live 6 days a week, twice daily, Monday through Friday at 12 noon and 5 p.m., once on Saturday at 5 p.m., and a live or an edited interview every Sunday. Actually, we got quite a few interviews coming up this week. We're going to try to publish 3 Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday.
Exactly. And yes, thank you so much for joining us today. Please do subscribe because it is what helps us out the most. Also, we try to read all your comments this week. We do have some shows where we're going to have back-to-back interviews before and after, so we might not get to all of them, but we do prioritize super chat. So if you really, really want your message read and you feel so inclined, you can always super chat. Otherwise, most of the comments will get read at the end of each segment. Also, we're trying to get to 100 likes per stream because it helps spread out the stream and help us get new viewers as well that are interested in the conversation. So please hit the like button if you also feel so inclined.
Well, it helps us get out. It helps us get to a new audience that maybe hasn't heard about Alberta independence, so we can convince some people to vote to separate on October 19th to vote for independence.
Exactly. And first of all, I'll say hi to all of you. Wild Rose Republic of Alberta says mainstream media is spinning the numbers as not enough, believe it or not.
Yeah, we know they're gonna spin it. We know there's gonna be attacks. There was attacks last week. There's attacks this week. If you missed our morning show, I highly recommend watching it. We came up with a strategy to start a national conversation, not just in Alberta, but in British Columbia, because of property rights being taken away and sovereignty really be taken away there. But also in Quebec, we need Quebec to start speaking up about independence. They have a strong independence movement, and it comes from the left-hand side. So it's very hard for the federal government to kind of counteract both a left and a right independence movement at the same time. If they can coordinate us off and deal with Alberta first and then Quebec, it's going to be a lot easier for them. Rather than the entire nation speaking about independence and sovereignty.
Because for the longest time, they have been siloing these conversations on just Alberta, just Quebec, and they don't want them to talk to each other, even though if there were coordinated attacks on the federal government from both sides, then they would have a lot harder time trying to counter both of them because they end up sounding like hypocrites as well.
Well, and we're going to go into that again a little bit later because I want this messaging to hopefully get out to other channels and other people in Alberta independence. First, we're going to go into the signatures, those being submitted, but I found a magnificent clip actually of the leader from the PQ in Quebec that came to Alberta, had an interview with the Western Standard. It was just a little under a year ago. And he's saying everything that I said, that we need to stand together, not politically, but with our messaging and start a national conversation. So he's open to it. We send him a message. Hopefully he gets it and he's willing to do an interview.
Yes, Glenn Gunn says, made it here with 1 second to spare. Hello, thank you for making it. Silverfeet says, hi, hello, thank you for being here. Troglodyte says, no notification, YouTube sucks. Well, of course.
Of course.
Thank you for being here.
Especially not today, I would guess.
We usually will always be here at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, so you can always find us at that time doing a live show, or 12 p.m. as well.
Yeah, except
this Thursday, because I am on WDW Pro, a channel that talks about wokeness and entertainment and how to get rid of that within the entertainment industry. Wild Rose Republic says, buenas tardes, buenas tardes, good evening, thank you for being here. Stephen Jackson, hello, says, heck yeah, bring on the referendum. Good job, guys. Might not be a lot, but we got more than we needed.
We got more than enough, and we got more than enough. So even if some of the signatures are disqualified because a bad ID or somebody moved out or something like that, we have more than enough to qualify for the 188,000 or whatever it was. So we're 100,000 over.
Yes. Glenn Gunn says, hi guys from Calgary, heard the news on votes. We have a chance. Yes.
Yeah. And there's 2 questions there. Let's not forget, if this radical judge keeps staying the stay-free question, the door's still open to the Kazakhs question. There's multiple options, and Danielle Smith has, I think, intentionally left both options open.
Mm-hmm. Glenn Gunn also says, think about the weather and the fact that people are afraid of their info being used to abuse and freeze certain things like was done at the Freedom Convoy. That too, and that is why I also do continue to say, yes, there might be that silent majority vote, but act as if that isn't there. Think that we have to start thinking right now in the campaign season about different strategies, thinking outside the box as to how to reach those people that might be on the fence or might think that they're a hard no, but once things are properly explained to them in terms that they understand and with things that they actually care about, could be potentially swayed towards a yes as well.
Absolutely. It's time for us to start pushing back and get the federal government on their back foot. Last week, there was a lot of attacks on Alberta independence, and it seemed like we were on our back foot. That's why I came up with these strategies to start national conversations, to tell Quebecers in the social media sphere or even in the political sphere over there, you need to start speaking up and raising your voice about independence, because it's going to help us over here, especially with the left-right dialectic, which I don't think the federal government's ready for.
Yeah. Glengan says, then think about a private ballot box. Now we need a leader.
And we were going to bring up that hard conversation in just a little bit, but we're in complete agreement. I think we need a leader as well. There is some fracturing. I think Keith Wilson is the man for that. We need to ask him from the grassroots to him. He is the man for that job. I don't think there's anybody else that ticks every single box. So Keith, if you're listening, now's the time going into this campaign season that we need a leader. It will stop any infighting, any fracturing, any attacks, or any plants that come from the federal government to say, no, he's not with us.
And maybe not even having to think of it as a leader, but a spokesperson, somebody to speak as well. And he, again, will be having that, hopefully will be having that debate with Jason Kenney if Jason Kenney doesn't run away after this other one that was behind closed doors. And I think that could also be a solidifying moment as well.
Well, it's a lot to ask from Keith Wilson. It's a lot of responsibility. So
and he has said he doesn't want to be president, but I mean, he could continue to be a spokesperson that speaks out maybe more and more times.
Well, where I was kind of going like that, it's a lot of responsibility to put on his shoulders, but it's now evident more than ever. We need a leader going into a campaign. Within a signature and a canvassing phase, we didn't need a leader. We were able to get there, but it's very obvious strategically with all these different organizations, there's going to be an overlap of a lot of work they're doing as well. We need to make sure that we're not double dutying a lot of this work. There's no infighting, stuff like that.
True. Troglodyte says 300,000 people isn't some wacko fringe movement. This will help to normalize independence in people's minds, shift that Overton window. But there's also a lot of work on the ground and online and content creators that we can also do to shift that Overton window and to open up the conversation just outside of just Alberta. Because again, the siloing of the conversation, the making it just an Alberta issue isn't helping Alberta independence and is not helping get it out into the national stage where more people could actually come support not just Alberta independence, but the conversation of sovereignty and that paradigm shift between citizens and their governments.
Yeah, there's a lot of related issues that are boiling to the surface within British Columbia. A lot of people from British Columbia are actually moving to Alberta. We need to anybody that's thinking about moving to the United States, move to Alberta, vote for Alberta independence, but they have to believe it's a real possibility. And how we do that is starting a national conversation. We're going to have a clip in a little bit from the guy with the PQ, and he was literally saying in the last referendum and in Quebec, they now have evidence that the federal government was moving in thousands of people to sway the vote. And with the vote that close, it made a difference. In Alberta, we want to have a similar strategy, but not move them in illegally, move them in absolutely legally, because hundreds of thousands of people are already moving to the United States. Let's use the United States as a safety net for them and try to make a change within a sovereign and free Alberta.
But I don't think that change or that conversation can happen if we continue to think and say, oh, it's just an Alberta conversation, because it can move away from that. Again, not moving away from first principles, not moving away from what a free and sovereign Alberta would actually mean. And it can be, that can be its own thing as well, and a different conversation. But the independence and sovereignty thing and the Canada might be just too big of a country conversation, that I think can be done on a more national, even international stage as well. Because again, it's not just Canada that's having these issues, and it's not just Alberta that is thinking of leaving as well.
When you start these conversations on a national stage with enough content creators bringing up the issue in different provinces, you'll see other content creators organically start to pick up conversations that are tangentially, which whether it's sovereignty, whether it's migration, things like that. And that's how we shift the entire country. If we can start a national conversation, and not only helps Alberta, it helps Saskatchewan and Quebec, and it also allows dots to be connected into liberal circles within Edmonton and Calgary. People will click on videos that are having organic conversations, and it will plant seeds. It's very hard to plant those seeds just by having little gatherings in Calgary and Edmonton. Very often we'll only get conservatives or people that are already open to the idea.
Don Adelic says, for me, the best part of the signature turn-in was I met and shook hands with Igor, the Fringe Albertan, and chatted with PJ, the Belt. A great day. And that's great that you got to meet them as well. I mean, eventually, when we go up there, I would love to meet them too. So
Yeah, and I'm glad PJ was out there.
Yeah.
I did watch Igor and I did watch the Fringe as well. So I think PJ the Belt can be one of the biggest voices within Alberta independence. His subscriber base is already large at 70,000. Let's try to get it up to 150 or 200,000.
Yes.
So he is one of those really, really big voices.
And we'd love to interview him. So if you ever do see him again, or if you have his email or something, let us know so we can actually reach out. Unfortunately, his DMs and other forms of contact, we haven't been able to contact him, but we'd love to talk to him as well.
Absolutely.
Glenn Gunn says, Keith backing Danielle would make this happen. We need her on board. Never know. I even think she might be more useful just as she is, kind of on that tightrope, because she can do and make moves that maybe the federal government won't see coming if she does decide to continue respecting democracy and seeing it forth all the way through.
Well, it's becoming very obvious right now that we do need a leader, and it was nice to think we can do it decentralized, but we're lucky enough to have somebody like Keith Wilson right there that really checks all the boxes. A lot of movements like this never have a leader as good as Keith Wilson, and they manage to kind of pull it off. He can kind of consolidate the troops, consolidate the messaging, and tighten the lines. Mm-hmm. And let's go into breaking news if we can.
A few more.
Oh, okay.
Tuna Soul Silver, hello, says, this pretty much confirms that mainstream media and liberals are trying to censor this movement. They know if this were to spread, it's going to get worse for them. Exactly. And that's why that whole line of thinking of, oh, this should only be about Alberta isn't useful and actually plays into what they're strategizing already as the federal government and the mainstream media.
They want to silo the Alberta independence movement inside Alberta, and they want to silo Quebec within that movement. If we can start a national dialogue, content creators across the country are going to be having conversations that the federal government has zero control to put out counter narratives through the mainstream media. It's going to be too big. It's going to be like a wildfire the national government just can't control.
True. And they don't know how to. Don Nedalak says, hi, Nat and Guy and everyone. Hello, thank you for being here. Glengan says, already happened. Troglodyte says, awesome, Don. I was there in spirit. And so were we as well. Glengan says, Alberta, big cities are already overrun with new Canadians. Most won't vote. You never know. Again, you never know. And that's why we have also spoken about Igor, for example, him being so targeted, I think also comes from the fact that he can speak to a base in a demographic that they don't want this message to get to, and they don't want this message spreading around the immigrant community and new Canadians as well. So that is, I think, why Igor is so important too.
Well, also, you have to understand, I keep saying it, but hundreds of thousands of Canadians are leaving every year. Once this becomes an actual question on the ballot, it kind of changes the paradigm, and a lot of people will be considering moving to Alberta, and maybe that's how we re-migrate people to Alberta that are actually willing to vote for independence.
Tuna Soul Silver says, Canada and Canadians take pride in having the greatest country in the world. And if Alberta votes to be independent, the country would be laughed at. Exactly. I mean, it already kind of is laughed at in international circles just because of the stubbornness that Carney has shown lately, especially with the negotiations. But in general, and imagine if it's not just Alberta leaving, but then Quebec, and then Saskatchewan, and then BC starts the conversation because they're worried about their property rights and they have no idea how to solidify and consolidate that self-determination that they wish they had, and then Manitoba, and then even the territories maybe. So it's in their best interest to keep this conversation quiet and siloed, and which is why we have to push completely against that and go the other way around.
Well, I will also say we have a big interview on Wednesday. I'm not going to say with who, because again, I'm not going to believe it is actually happening until it does. That being said, it's pushing the conversation on a much larger national scale, and I'm happy this individual agreed to do the interview.
True. Sven de God, the last one, and then we'll go.
Well, we're actually going to release that interview. We're going to do on Wednesday on Thursday because I feel it's really important to get this message out to a national audience.
Mm-hmm. Sven de God Grown Show says, today was a fantastic day. I was part of history. Exactly, that too. I met everyone. Plus, was fortunate to be behind the stage with Mitch, Jeff, and everyone. Maybe when we watch the videos, we can try to see if we can find you there behind the stage. And Steely Lee 01 says, I agree. A national conversation conversation is needed as there is such a disconnect between provinces, particularly East and West. And imagine if that disconnect actually joins to be able to break Canada apart. Which is the worst thing they could think of, I think.
There's a big resentment from Alberta to Quebec and Quebec to Alberta, but the leadership in Quebec is willing to put those aside. And a lot of people in Alberta are willing to put differences aside because we both have similar goals and we're both coming from different positions, which really gives a headache to the federal government. The clip we're going to show later, I wish I had seen it before we did the morning episode, because everything the leader of the PQ is saying, he's willing to cooperate and work with Alberta with their independence movement, not politically, but to start a conversation on a national scale.
Yeah. Okay, now let's go into, is it breaking news, I'm guessing?
Yeah, let's go into breaking news, and it's going to be a lot about the signatures. Yes. If you weren't there, I want you to have the chance to see what happened on the ground, because it was a big day.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
And starting with, as we mentioned, a historic day from Rise of Alberta saying, quote, breaking 301,620 signatures have officially been announced for the Alberta Independence Petition. This is far beyond the required threshold to trigger the Alberta Independence vote on October 19th, a massive day for the Alberta Independence movement, and as a lot of you mentioned, a historic day as well.
Well, and we also have to mention there's more coming in the mail. The mail service delayed a lot of delivery, Mitch said, so it's actually a little bit higher than this, but I'm happy because we not only reached the threshold, we got so far over the threshold, even if a large quantity are disqualified, we've still made what we need for an October 19th referendum.
Exactly. And there is essentially no excuses at this point that, I mean, they'll try, I'm sure, but there's no excuses.
Yeah. And I know I did say I wanted 406,000 signatures so we can beat the other ballot. Yeah, I am a little bit disappointed, but I got to say, we were up against far harsher conditions than that other ballot ever was. And the fact that we had ID requirements, a lot of other requirements they didn't have. We had to train every single canvasser that was getting petitions. So it's very interesting. We even managed to get as high as we did. The DAC was stacked against us, and we did a fantastic job.
And also to each and every single one of those canvassers, also thank you. And the fact that this is your historic moment because you were the ones that were able to achieve this in the incredibly harsh conditions of winter in Alberta, and with standing there waving flags, having that positive attitude as well, not stooping to the levels that those that were trying to go against Alberta independence did, and proving and showing that it was possible and it was done by all of you, by the citizens, and by citizens wanting to use and raise their voices.
Absolutely.
But Sheila Gunn Reid says, there she is, the big, beautiful Act for Alberta billboard truck at the Independence Petition signature drop-off at Elections Alberta offices in Edmonton.
Well, and it has been great to have Rebel News supporting us on every level of that, oh God, what is it called?
Poll?
Yeah, the poll they did the other day was absolutely fantastic in helping us realize that we got some work to do and that we need to stand together. This advertising truck with the billboard on the side is helping us in all kinds of locations across Alberta. And the fact that they helped deliver the petitions, I'm glad they were involved on the ground.
True.
And absolutely fantastic that they were there. I'm glad to see them. They're going to continue to be a cornerstone of this movement going forward. We really did need a large media organization on a national level that can get out the news. I understand they're alternative media and they're not mainstream media, but they're the best we got, and we're thankful to have them.
True. And also, Rise of Alberta says, quote, it's official, Mitch Sylvester has announced the 301,620 signatures for the Alberta Independence Petition outside Elections Alberta office in Edmonton. He called on the Premier to recognize this as a clear expression of the democratic will of Albertans and move forward with putting the question on the October 19th ballot.
We look forward to your government receiving this clear expression of the democratic will of Albertans and advancing the next steps to include this important question on the referendum ballot on October 19th, 2026. Yeah. Respectfully, Mitch Sylvester. So the updated number now is 301,620, including our 1,500 level. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all. We look forward to your government.
Yeah, and he thanks everybody, and we thank everybody as well. We're at the point that we need to be, and yeah.
And again, it's not a bad time. There's 6 months ahead to start strategizing, which is why we started doing it on Saturday, but also on our show this morning, as to how to move forward and actually get this to completion and to happen. It's not a time, yes, celebrate today, but also use it as a springboard to continue forward.
Well, yeah, and I'll say the three main strategies that we kind of came up with are the three major things that need to happen right now, because we already have a good ground game in rural areas. Is we need to go into Calgary and Edmonton with a more traditional ground game, throwing events and things like that, trying to get to the other side that's on the fence, and hopefully sway some polling numbers within those major cities, because that's where we're lacking. That's number one. Number two, we need to start a national conversation and get other independence movements like Quebec talking about this from a left-hand perspective, as well as Saskatchewan, as well as BC, because sovereignty is being taken from BC through private property rights. And the last thing I think we need to do is really make a plea for a leader, and that leader is Keith Wilson, I believe. And I think we know we need that now more than ever, because there is major attacks coming from not only the mainstream media, but the federal government, and it's got us on our back foot.
A leader, or at least a spokesperson. But
Yeah.
we have been talking again about getting that national conversation started. And luckily, there is an independence movement already that's almost centuries old, within Quebec itself, and also within Alberta, because Alberta has been wanting to be independent since about the 1900s. Let's not forget about that fact. The fact that now citizens were able to gather and actually make it an actionable plan is very impressive that it happened. But we do have here the leader of the PQ, the Parti Québécois, called Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, talking in Alberta about this.
Okay, let's talk about this a little bit. That was a long-winded intro for this. We need to start that national conversation. We talked about this pretty much for most of the episode with the morning episode. I managed to find this clip where I guess a lot of people within the Quebec independence movement agree. Both independence movements, if we can start conversations, will help propel the other independence movement, and not just within Quebec, but on a national stage.
You know, as I've said, Alberta and Quebec both want decentralization
Pause
and
it.
more power at home.
And it's quite a long clip, so we're going to play at 1.5 speed so we can get through most of it. I'm going to pause it periodically. Hopefully it's not too quick for everybody, though.
But we tend to want different kinds. Quebec more cultural, Alberta more physical. But we do to some extent.
Yeah, and things are changing. I mean,
yeah, I increasingly want more here. Immigration is not just a fiscal issue now; it is very much a social issue. And so, you know, we've talked about so building those alliances. I find has, you know, the two big decentralist provinces, to use a dirty word. But we've wanted different kinds, and in large measure that is why Meech Lake and especially Charlottetown Accords failed. You know, Quebec and Alberta were the two leading areas of Canada that voted down Charlottetown, but we voted it down for very different reasons. Yeah, Albertans and Westerners broadly voted it down because it was seen as creating asymmetrical federalism, giving special deals to Quebec, and there was also some First Nations issues in it. There was, you know, it was a huge agreement. Yeah, but we voted it down for one set of reasons, being seen as overly appeasing Quebec. Quebecers voted it down, at least as I perceive it, as it didn't go far enough in defending Quebec's culture and autonomy.
And pause this here.
I know
Again, this is from the Western Standard. I guess the leader of the PQ came out to Alberta at one point, and they talked about strategies and things going forward on what would help Alberta independence and Quebec independence. This was a very, very interesting interview, and they brought up migration. The number one issue in Quebec, it happens to be immigration and how they're being flooded with mass migration. The number one thing in Alberta as well, when it was polled by Rebel News, happened to be mass migration. And that's something I don't think we've talked a lot about within Alberta.
For independence, I prefer independence. But I mean, you've tried twice, didn't work. We haven't even had a shot at it, and even then, it's a long shot for us to achieve it. Yeah. Failing independence, is there some kind of grand bargain? We call it Charlottetown 2, that could. Okay.
for us.
Yeah, but like, if failing independence, if independence is not successful, is there a kind of grand bargain from your perspective that you think you could make that would make the Quebec nation happy and content within Canada, that would work for you?
To the question, what does Quebec want? The answer is clear, crystal clear. Quebec wants self-determination, democratic self-determination. Why? Because it's the only model that gives a future to our specificity, linguistic and cultural. Other financial reasons have joined the reasons, but basically that's it. So, I mean, the only reason why federal prime ministers engaged into such complicated negotiations and talks was that they felt there was a direct threat to their power and their regime. They didn't do that in good faith because they just like to improve the life of Quebecers or Albertans. So it might happen that as Quebec's sovereignty movement, independence movement grows in strength, and probably Alberta's same movement grows in strength, you'll find federal politicians nervous saying, okay, let's renegotiate in good faith. I think we've been through that, and anything under self-determination in terms of our laws, our finances, and international relations will not work for Quebec because it will not work for our linguistic, cultural, and financial specificity. However, once it's done, so once Quebec declares independence, I think if Alberta declares independence, Quebec will follow, saying, same here, vice versa. If Quebec goes, I think Alberta will say, okay, I'm also independent. In which case, we will talk to each other about what framework would be useful on a number of topics, but without the federal trying to grab money and grab power and defend their privileges. Without them. Without interference and constant abuse of power since 1867, a constitution that we never voted or agreed upon. It's in direct link. It's really about the colonial regime for Quebec. So I think it's the other way around.
It's very interesting, his perspective on it, because again, they're coming from more of a leftist dialectic, and this is going to be really confusing for the federal government to deal with a both left and right independence movement at the same time. If they can divide one and deal with the one first, and then a year later deal with the other one, the federal government really has the ball in their court, and they have all the moves. If we can raise our voices together, even if Quebec isn't having the referendum at the same time, but the national conversation comes up out of Quebec about a leftist independence, and the question and the conversation comes up out of Alberta about a more conservative independence movement, it'll be very interesting what moves the federal government actually has left, because I don't think they're going to have a lot at that point.
Round. You become independent, and a bit like Norway and Sweden or Slovakia and Czech Republic or in many, like, of course, in the following days, I will not be wanting to negotiate with the federal. I will want to negotiate with other provinces who think actually mostly the same thing as I do about how it should work. Doesn't mean we agree on our priorities, but we agree that a framework that would respect our respective, would show respect to our respective parliaments, is much better than abuse of power based on an old and dysfunctional constitution. That and you have to add to that we were during the patriation of the 1982 constitution, we were totally out of it. It's just the end of the contempt is a better start for a new framework than trying to deal with people who have been abusing their powers, begging them to stop abusing their powers, and take the immigration situation. So Justin Trudeau out of the blue, but not out.
Pause it. And this is very interesting, because if we can get Quebec to start speaking up about immigration, their entire movement is based upon the French identity, and that the fact that it's disappearing when you're flooding them, or the Quebec identity when you're flooding them with mass immigration. It's very hard for the federal government to call them racist and everything like that, because if they do, it's going to send more Quebecers to the polls to vote for independence. So if we both start voicing our discontent with mass migration and other subjects, it's hard to call one movement racist without calling the other one. And this is the paradigm shift we need with the national conversation, and having Quebec raise their voice at the same time Alberta and BC raise theirs.
Had a group called the Century Initiative on Bay Street. They decided that we need to be 100 million Canadians based on whatever fluke economics. They don't consult anyone. They just start doing this by saying, hey, come to Roxham. And they changed the criteria at the airport. They really sabotaged our immigration system that was working well. They were warned by provinces. They were warned by their own public servants. You will create the worst housing crisis we've seen in decades. Don't do it. And they did it anyway. So why would I negotiate with these people? Why would I give them legitimacy? They're abusing their power, and they're toxic for the public good in Quebec. And I think many Albertans are starting to think the same in regards of their conception of public good in Alberta. So I'd rather have independence, and then we make a deal and we talk, because I expect collaboration to be ongoing on so many things. Simply, we're used to it, and there are so many things we can work, and that's why I'm here. So just to say, by the way, the door is open. We have many things to talk about.
Pause it. The door is open. They have many things to talk about. Well, that's why we need to have a national conversation. When we reached out to him, we just reached out last night. We're hoping for an interview. I didn't know his stance, if he was open to have a dialogue and a conversation. He was a year ago. I'm sure he still is today. The rise of Quebec independence only helps to cement the rise of Alberta independence. We need to come together and have not a political coalition, but a conversational national conversation
on sovereignty and independence, and the fact that by gaining sovereignty and independence, both Alberta and Quebec can choose and self-determine their own destinies and their own futures. It doesn't have to be the same one, but can work together against the push from the federal government.
And it's just about over, and then we'll go into some questions and stuff. Comments.
But going through a new Charlottetown or a new Meech Lake, I just don't see where it could lead that is positive. I just don't see it.
Okay, well, I'm just going to sneak one last one because it's really quick. You've convinced me on a lot of things. So when you have that third referendum on independence, are you going to let Albertans vote in it?
Oh, don't do that. Well, you know that the federal government cheated on the second referendum by bringing in people that were not from Quebec in order for them to vote in a result that was so close.
Yeah.
So among the things that maybe people listening to us in Alberta don't know,
Okay.
I mean, they arrested members of the Parti Québécois. They stolen the list of members. They cheated during the patriation of the Constitution. They cheated during the referendum.
They stole the list. Go figure, the federal government, and now they want to accuse other people of doing the same thing. Also, if they were willing to flood Quebec with mass immigration at that point, all the way back then, you got to believe it's coming to Alberta. And that's why I've been making the plea to conservatives that are moving to the United States to move to Alberta, because we need to counteract their next move on the chessboard.
I mean, at some point, yes, there could be some kind of solidarity or some common understanding of the fact that serving genuine democracy is serving public good. And that's why when you're asking me about how the federal will react in terms of Clarity Act and so on, there's been so many instances where the federal cheated and was dishonest. So I don't expect anything else. And yes, some form of collaboration on the fundamentals would be useful. And I think that's why I'm here. Your self-determination in Alberta is yours to determine. It's yours to decide. And if you feel you have a common identity and common interests that are worth becoming a country, good for you. And it's not for me to have a judgment on it. But if I can be useful to democracy, or if we can be useful to both our interests, economic interests in the short term and so on, why not talk instead of being in that weird equalization and federal framework where nobody agrees because the interests are just not compatible and the abuse of power is so constant.
And we can kind of leave it there. And this interview was done just almost a year ago, and it almost seemed like he was spitballing the idea, like, because Alberta independence didn't really have real legs under it at that time. And he was like, if things really start to happen there, we need to hit the federal government with the 1-2 from a left-right dialectic here. And he's willing to do it. And I think he was hoping Alberta independence would get legs under it. It has legs under it now. We need to be reaching out to him to say, start the conversation in Quebec. All your gripes about immigration and whatever else reasons you want independence, start that dialogue on a national scale from a leftist perspective. A lot of those talking points will make it into Calgary and Edmonton as well.
And that's the thing. You can actually reframe it in ways that people that usually would be on the no side could maybe understand. Primoris 007 says, Hola Nat Igay, hello, says looking forward to the show tonight. People should not think Danielle will jump on independence wagon. She has been within a united Canada and no change until the wind changes. And true in that sense, but also maybe she might be more useful staying in the middle and in the I just want democracy to move forward, and I'm just going to make sure that the voice and the will of the people is heard through voting and through democracy. Because that, in a way, also gives her more place if she's not going to be showing her cards all at the same time. At least that's the way I see it. Glenn Gunn says, Tsuna, we are already being laughed at. Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of elbows up Canadians don't want to realize that, but that is the fact. Don Adelic says, I thought that your spirit, I felt troglodytes being there in spirit at the signature delivery. Tsuna says, it's still not enough. The country lives in an echo chamber. True, but if we are able to break that echo chamber, then
if we can spark a national conversation, not just about independence, but sovereignty and related issues in the content creation space on the ground with other political figures in other provinces, this really is how we break that paradigm. And yeah, I think that's really the next stage. It costs $0 to start a national conversation.
True.
You just spark conversations online, and you'll see,
and on the ground,
and you'll see it start to metastasize, and it will start to become organic outside of Alberta independence and outside of Quebec.
True. Troglodyte says, hard to be elitist when you cannot afford food. Exactly. Primoris 007 says, F Quebec. But again, I think we might have to move a little bit away from that for a bit and say, okay, let's actually talk about independence, not to join movements or whatever, but to want to punch the federal government.
This is
They're
not.
not going to be expecting that.
This is not a political alliance I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting Quebec start their conversation because they've been out of the headlines. Their independence movement was making big waves a few months ago, and it's kind of gone silent. And this is when we really need them the most to kind of be speaking up, not in support of Alberta independence, just have their own gripes and bring that to a national conversation. That helps us over here because if the federal government says something about Quebec independence, it's going to contradict the narrative they need to try to build with Alberta, and it will show the hypocrisy.
Exactly. Justin GP says, hi, Nat and Guy and everyone. Great day today. Nat, check your email. I got you guys a Western Standard subscription. Thank you so much.
Oh my God.
That's so nice.
Did you?
No.
I've been wanting the Western Standard subscription. You have no idea. I was like, oh, I wish we had more money. I want the Western Standard. There's so many articles I click on that I can't read because it's the number one place for Alberta, like independent written news.
Exactly. So
wow,
thank you so much,
that's
Justin
shocking
GP.
because I was just thinking that yesterday. I clicked on like 5
You read
Western.
his mind.
I clicked on 5 Western Standard articles and I was like, I was getting a little pissed.
Thank you so much, Justin GP. Mike Freedom Honey, hello, says, I needed today, lifted the spirits. That's good.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people needed that today, and it was really good to see all the flags out there.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you to everybody that went out. Thank you to everybody that did the petition, and thank you to everybody that's publicly supporting Alberta independence.
True. Troglodyte says, hiya, Jez, that's awesome. And yes, it is awesome. Jez also says, saw you there, Mike. Was going to go up and say pineapple pizza, but you were pretty busy.
Well, I always see Freedom Honey or Mike on the Fringe, but I was watching...
Unacceptable Fringe.
Unacceptable Fringe, but I was watching John talking to Albertans. He did an interview with him, and you got a completely different presence outside of the studio. It was absolutely fantastic to see you at that event.
Mike says, smash that like button. Thank you so much. It really does help out as well. Troglodyte says, today brought me back to the Freedom Convoy, hope and happy people looking forward to change. And I hope with that spirit and that positivity as well, it can push forth to the strategies and thinking about strategies, not in a negative light of, oh, we need more people, blah, 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 but as in, how can we convince more people? And that being an exciting prospect as well.
Well, and we don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars for a lot of strategies. The strategy I'm talking about starting a national conversation costs $0. What I need is my audience to help me out. And if you have suggestions for interviews and you have contacts for interviews on people that will talk about independence, even outside of Alberta, like in British Columbia, Quebec. I'm having a real tough time finding people in Quebec because, number one, I don't speak French. A lot of them aren't bilingual, but we need to spark their independence conversation at the same time we're sparking ours.
Mm-hmm. Justin DP says, you may have seen me. I was the one with the Alberta flag.
Well,
you were there all over the place.
That's like finding Where's Waldo. It seemed like every single person had an Alberta flag, which was fantastic to see.
And that was exactly what I was going to say. That was great to see. Albert Twitch says, once the comfort virus fades with declining living conditions, even the most uninformed will start to stir from their deep, complacent slumber. And hopefully it will be soon. I hope it is soon because otherwise there are other strategies as well as to how to reach different people with different messaging that will get to those points that maybe they don't realize yet that affect them, but that when you plant that seed in their head, they'll start and continue to think about, oh, that's right. I don't have enough money to buy X, Y, Z. Oh, I'm having to work 3-4 jobs. Maybe could I work one job? Maybe. Oh, I'm going to university and I have to work these jobs and I never have time to do anything and I can't afford my rent, blah, blah, blah. But once you kind of put it in the forefront and let that conversation come up instead of letting people dig it down deep because of shame or whatever it might be, or depression, I guess, but the living conditions, then that can also plant that seed for independence. Troglodyte says, a sea of blue flags was beautiful to see.
Absolutely.
Yes. Lori Pollock says, oh, what a cool truck. The Rebel News one. Alba Tuch says, don't agree with everything Rebel represents, but good on them for standing for the movement. And they also have they've been tested through free speech and through the federal government trying to shut them down and silence them. So in that way, they have sharpened themselves, I think, a bit more
Well, I think what you mean is if the federal government comes with prosecutions or tries to take people to court, Rebel News will push back with a legal team. So we're not just going to fold right away, which is good to know. And they can, yeah.
That's what I was trying to say. Glenn Gunn says, just wait for July 1st, Alberta Day at the Whistle Stop Cafe. This past week was huge. Live stage camping, great food from Chris Scott's Cafe.
A lot of helicopters going in and out of that place. It was good to see.
And we're also, Chris Scott's interview will come out on Wednesday. Just so everybody
we got
knows.
Chris Scott's interview coming out Wednesday, and then we got a surprise interview on Thursday if it actually takes place on Wednesday.
Yes, and then one coming out on Sunday too.
Yeah.
Critical Compass coming out on Sunday. Alba Twitch says, awesome, Chris is doing some great work. And yes, he is. Glenn Gunn says, so many people there, I think I may go for July 1st. And Alba Twitch asks, he is Mirror, right? Yes, in Mirror, Alberta. Hold on. Oh, Glenn Gunn says, Tamara may perform. That's cool.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. Because when we interviewed her, we asked for a picture after to put it on the front cover. She sent us two, her normal one and another one playing the guitar.
Yeah.
So
Alba Twitch says, oh, cool. I hope I don't have to work. And that too. Glenn says, I'm going to hitch on the way up with an Alberta flag. Good. Alba Twitch says, Quebec following suit will draw some of the federal response off of our movement. And they will also not, they're going to lose so many tactics that I think they were and will try to use against Alberta independence because it also goes against a lot of the main arguments that they want to use against Alberta independence. 1 second. Troglodyte, thank you so much for the $10 super chat saying, to commemorate this important day in history, great work all. And thank you so much. And again, it is a thank you to all of you and all the citizens that are already engaged and already looking to democracy to actually change the paradigm between citizens and the government.
Yeah, there's so many paradigm changing shifts that happen when we start a national conversation within BC, with Quebec as well, because it brings a leftist independence perspective to the national stage, which I don't necessarily always agree with, but it's going to plant the seed and start conversations with liberals and people that aren't even willing to entertain the idea of independence at this point. And it might not shift them over to vote for us, but it may plant enough seeds so on the day of the vote, they just stay home.
And maybe reframe the conversation that from what the mainstream media, the paid-off media, has been telling them to the lemmings. Troglodyte says, Parizeau blamed the immigrants for the last referendum loss. Yes, and Paul also brought it there too. Harmony says, self-determination is what will bring healing and health to all Albertans.
Absolutely. And that's
literally and metaphorically.
Well, and that's what I think that's what most of Alberta is trying to do right now.
Alba Twitch says, it's about time we start ruling over ourselves like sovereign adults. Can't believe we've stood for this treatment for so long.
Yeah.
Exactly. Troglodyte says, yep, they will have to fight on two fronts like that Austrian painter guy.
Well, not just two fronts. When I'm saying national conversation, the main two fronts will be Alberta from the right and Quebec from the left, which is just going to be so confusing mentally to make a cohesive argument against the right both. And the left. Yeah. But with Saskatchewan coming up, British Columbia losing their sovereignty to private property rights, I can do plenty of interviews with people in British Columbia about private property rights to bring up the idea of sovereignty being taken. A national conversation can happen in every single province across Canada, and it doesn't take a lot of time. It just requires a few content creators to do interviews about Alberta independence or related subjects like private property rights and sovereignty with people from other provinces.
And interestingly, in British Columbia, the private property rights conversation, now that it has hit Vancouver and the big city, well, a lot of people within different demographics are now also worried about that when before maybe they were even advocating for the steps it took to take away private property rights. Now they might be rethinking what they've been advocating for so long. So it's a whole new demographic that is now also worried about their houses losing value and them not being able to sell their houses when before they were for sure liberal voters. Now that thought is in their head, that seed's in their head.
Well,
too.
Not even that. The number one province people are fleeing from, I think this year is going to be British Columbia because of this private property issue. And the United States is very hard to immigrate to sometimes. They may be looking at Alberta. We may have a huge influx of conservatives that are willing to vote for independence coming from British Columbia.
Glenn Gunn says, I determined my vote didn't count at Thunder Bay a long time ago. And Alba Twitch says, yeah, that's a pretty good analogy. Glenn Gunn says, without Alberta, the UCP is gone.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But the way the the way the mainstream media is trying to pitch it today is, oh, the UCP is very popular. Independence isn't popular because their seat count is going up. What they fail to mention is their seat count is going up dramatically because the independence movement strategy is to pay the $10 to join the UCP so we can have influence and pressure Danielle Smith to make sure one of those questions is on the October 19th ballot.
True, but they will never say that in mainstream media. Harmony says, instead of paying useless money to so-called healthcare, we spend money on useless healthcare because pure well-being will be number one. Yes. Albert Twitch says it, well, if Quebec leaves directly after, it should level things out. I mean, true.
Well, I've talked about this plenty of times in the past. If Alberta leaves, a lot of people say the country will never be conservative again. That's not true. If Alberta leaves, and even if Saskatchewan leaves, if Quebec leaves on the other side, the amount of seats that shift turns the entire rest of Canada that's left conservative. So it's very interesting. The way to save Canada and turn it to a conservative way of thinking, maybe for Alberta and Quebec to actually leave.
Or, just the country ends up just being like Ottawa and some of the large the lead provinces. A 2.0 says Albertans finally get their vote to count on October 19th.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure of it as well. Troglodyte says so many Canadians are hurting and seeing their country sold from beneath their feet. It's important to harness that. Exactly. Yes. You have and to consolidate that conversation as well. To again, we've been siloed into these different. Quebec doesn't talk to Alberta. Alberta doesn't talk to Quebec. Nobody talks to each other, and that is in a way a fabrication also from the federal government because it's easier to deal with those siloed movements than if they're coming from the left and the right and they don't know really what to do. Because if they say one thing, they'll be hypocritical on this side. If they say another thing, then they'll be hypocritical on the other. So being able to break that Overton window, as we continue to say, and Troglodyte continues to say, to one-up the federal government and their strategies.
Also think about what we're doing. We have great content creators within Alberta Independence. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love every content creator within the space, but we're all Alberta Independence content creators. We need to start national conversations about issues that are related to it, because a lot of people often who clicks on an Alberta Independence video is going to be somebody that already believes in Alberta Independence. We need to start conversations on a provincial level inside Alberta, but on a national level about more than just Alberta Independence, because those conversations are what plant seeds, and then you plant another seed and another one, and eventually they click on an Alberta Independence video. Right now, it's very hard to get somebody that hasn't had any seeds planted to actually listen to our content creators.
True. Glenn Gunn says working on it, and also says Quebec will never give up the cash cow. I don't know. I mean, with PQ gaining steam.
First of all, it doesn't matter whether they're willing to give up the cash cow or not. There are a ton of people within Quebec that actually want independence. So let's just say that PQ wants a better deal. The people that support independence want independence. If we can get those people talking online, in person, and pressuring the PQ, it starts a national conversation from a leftist dialectic, which is very useful to us in a lot of different ways.
Albert Twitch says to Harmony, yes, we needn't rely on an allopathic system devised by the Rockefellers. A return to holistic treatment is a must.
And I love your comments.
That was Albert Twitch, though, but responding to Harmony.
It's rubbing off.
Tuna Soul Silver says, I mean, there are too many wasted spending. There's too much wasted spending in Canada, especially for the past 11 years. And I would say for the longest time, too.
Yeah.
And let's also remember that Alberta is not just a historic moment for Alberta or a paradigm shifting moment for Alberta, not even just Canada, but internationally. It's also proving and showing to a lot of other concerned citizens, other citizens that do think that they don't have self-determination anymore, number one, what to do, but number two, that the conversation is important and that they can have that conversation.
We were talking to an American about independence, and he was fairly radical in a lot of his views. And when I brought up independence, he immediately jumped to this idea of civil war. And internationally in the United States, a lot of people don't realize there's a legal path within Canada. And if we can set the example of a legal path and a peaceful way for independence, it's going to set an example for the rest of the world. Like, why don't we have a path? What happens when the elites go so far the other way and stop listening to its citizens? It really is a paradigm shift for not just Canada, but the world.
Sean says or asks, Guy, are you advocating dialectical materialism? You know that's Marxism.
What's dialectic?
No, he's not. I know it is, but no, he's not.
That's over my head. That's the big words.
Troglodyte says, Quebec has adapted to learned helplessness. True, but again, there are those that truly do believe in independence and in Quebec becoming fully independent. And even speaking about the fact that they're not able, or well, they say they're not able to fully use the resources that they do have within the province. So again, that conversation can be pushed.
Look, I don't need to push Quebec independence. What I want is to start a national conversation. And the biggest two ways to start that conversation on the right is Alberta independence, and on the left is Quebec independence. We need to get both conversations shooting up at the same time, so the rest of the provinces and the content creators in those provinces start talking about independence, what it can mean for the future of Canada, different provinces themselves, and tangential issues as well.
DeBover says, good evening to all. Good evening. Thank you for being here. Troglodyte says, 53 watching. Nice. 60 now, apparently, according to my thing.
Fantastic.
Thank you all for being here as well. Glengun says, explain dialectical. So the way in which conversation or the way in which a topic is framed, essentially.
Yeah, right now, the conversation of independence, because Alberta independence is the only independence movement really making national news or even news within Alberta, is from a right dialectic, I think. If we can get Quebec talking about it from a left dialectic, it really is going to confuse the federal government on how to make arguments. Anything they say to go against Alberta independence is going to probably contradict what they say about Quebec and vice versa. So it makes it so the federal government can't plug the hole in the ship, patch it up, and then go plug the other hole once Quebec starts up later on. Mm-hmm. It makes it so, oh no, there's a hole here. Oh no, there's a hole here. Oh no, now in Saskatchewan, they're running all over the ship, and the federal ship eventually sinks, rather than giving them time to address each individual independence movement and conversation. Mm-hmm. Because some of these conversations that are going to come up, like in BC, are more about sovereignty, but it's another hole that the federal government's going to have to go rush to try to plug up.
True. Harmony says, today was historic, a new beginning for our children and our grandchildren. The federal government hurts our health because children should be given the opportunity to be themselves.
Absolutely.
I fully agree as well. Alba Twitch says, Quebec sovereigntists are perhaps our best allies. And maybe we've been listening in too much to the narratives that have been built through the decades, but not using what we could be using and what could be actually helpful, just by not wanting to realize that.
No, we don't need to agree with them.
No,
their independence movement is completely different than our independence movement. Yeah. We all need to raise our voice at the same time, and that's how we bring the federal system down.
Silverfeet says he will speak about the mass immigration issue and the others because he will campaign on them for Quebec provincial election before October 19th. For the Quebec provincial election before October 19th.
Yeah.
A 2.0 says the Canadian national debt climbed from $560 billion to over $1.3 trillion under the Liberal government, and it will continue to. Alba Twitch says, precisely, drugging kiddies into zombie states is unconscionable. Kids are supposed to be boisterous. ADD and the like are nonsense conditions. It's all just kids being kids.
Okay, let's go into Alberta politics if we can.
Hold on, two more.
Okay.
Sean says, oh man, it's kind of confusing, but dialectical is a way of viewing society in two ways, like victim, victimizer. True, but the way I think we're using it, or you're using it, is in the fact of how the framing is for each, the arguments and the framing for each different, coming from the left and or the right in Alberta versus Quebec.
Yeah, because this is the issue that you have with a Alberta.
Not the society itself, but the points that are being made for independence in these two different areas.
This is the issue you have with an Alberta independence movement and a Saskatchewan independence movement. All the talking points are the same. All the views are the same. Similar. So it's very easy for the federal government to try to build a narrative or try to put us on our back foot with different game plans. But the Quebec independence movement is completely opposite realm of thinking. It's a leftist independence movement. Well, we're a right independence movement. So it causes a lot of havoc and mass confusion for the federal government on how to deal with both at the same time. The way they want to deal with it is to silo one movement, silo the other movement, and then deal with one and then the other a year or two later.
Mm-hmm. Harmony says, thank you, Nat and the Guy, to get this man on your show, the man from Quebec. We're trying our hardest.
We're really trying. If anybody knows anybody from the PQ or how to reach out to him, we've already reached out to him through X. We now know from that Western Standard that he's willing to reach out to people in Alberta, because I think he understands as well, if we can both start raising our voice at the same time, it's going to mean a win for both provinces, even though we have disagreements.
Which will be two different countries, sovereign and with very, I think, different foundational principles as well.
Yeah.
But let's go into, I'll continue reading your comments in a bit, but let's go into
Alberta Politics.
Not Alberta Stay Free?
We already did
No,
Stay Free.
Alberta Politics, sorry.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And, oh, hold on, I didn't prepare it. And no, we didn't do Alberta Stay Free.
Oh, we didn't.
No.
Oh, okay.
Should I play it again?
No, let's just go into Alberta Politics for now, and then we'll figure it out.
Okay, hold on. Now I have to find the one that's the right one.
Okay, well, you know what? Just go to Alberta Stay
No,
Free.
now I found it.
No, just go to Alberta Stay Free, because
Okay.
that's the most important section.
Let me press the button again.
Free home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
And more music, the better.
Yes. Sorry. Starting with from Freedom Calendar, saying the only way to win Alberta independence is to win your friends to town halls, or to bring your friends, I guess, to town halls.
And this was a very, very interesting conversation. By the way, we're going to be interviewing Max from Freedom Calendar later this week. So we'll release that in a couple weeks after we do it. This was very interesting. I started watching this and I almost turned it off, and I was glad that I didn't. Mitch Sylvester brought up some very good points, and we'll kind of watch it. I think this is the right clip. So.
But this is going to come down to grassroots politics. The only way we win this is if you bring your friends, is if you talk to your friends, if you take responsibility for your get out to vote, to make sure that the people that you're in charge of or friends of or whatever, you make sure that they have the ability to come out and vote and support this, and that they have the willingness to do it. But this is going to come down.
Okay, and then there was a little bit more he said there too, which was very interesting. That's what originally got me thinking of how can we come up with a new strategy, and what is that strategy? And that's how I came up with this idea of a national conversation between provinces, but from both the left and the right. But he also goes on to say, because he agreed that we need to go into Calgary and Edmonton because that's where our polling is lacking. We don't have to win the whole city. We just have to win part of it. I think he's going to do it in a very traditional sense, which we need. We need a ground game as well. But he also said it's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of resources, as in people. And I do agree with that. And that's what made me say, man, we really need to stop playing with inside the normal political sandbox and come up with a secondary strategy, which we can use simultaneously with the ground game. And that's why I came up with this idea of a national conversation. It doesn't take any money. It only takes a few content creators to start interviewing different individuals interprovincially to start a conversation on a national level about independence and related subjects.
Tangential subjects.
Related subjects. But it was actually that interview that Max did with Mitch Sylvester that really got me thinking, how do we do this? Because we're going to be outspent by the federal government. So we need to come up with strategies that cost money, but also strategies that don't cost money, that we can work together at the exact same time. And we need to also come up with strategies that aren't traditional political strategies, because the federal government is ready for those.
Yes. Exactly. But Rebel News also says, quote, my head exploded. Keith Wilson on Liberals using Alberta's energy as leverage in U.S. negotiations. Mark Carney is continuing to face backlash for failing to secure a trade deal with the U.S. over a year after he became prime minister.
Okay, let's play the clip there.
Yeah,
You're losing your words.
Sheila Gunreed is better at speaking than I am, so let's just let her talk. 1 second.
And we're going to see the voices of no, the Project Fear, get louder and louder and louder. The people who say that this can't be done, it will ruin everything. Excuse me, what's the difference? Like, for people who say like, oh, the interest rates are going to go out of control and you're going to have out of control inflation and you won't be able to get a pipeline built. Yeah, thanks. That's now. So we're going to have a lot of people on the federalist side trying to scare people away from their own future.
And yeah, they're going to try to launch Project Fear. It's never been effective, but if we can start a national conversation with provinces that have grievances against the federal government, at the same time we're fighting for independence, it goes to help out Alberta independence. We need to have counter strategies.
Yeah, and I mean, they're going to do Project Fear. And it's ironic because anytime they try this Project Fear, it doesn't stand even a superficial level of analysis. And let me just give you a couple of quick examples. One is the Federalists have argued, and Ottawa has said, if Alberta were to become independent, you'd be so vulnerable in your trade relationship with the United States, you wouldn't have any leverage. Meanwhile, Carney's absolutely blowing his negotiations with the largest economy in the world, our largest trading partner as a country in a market that has allowed Canada to have the standard of living that Canadians have had. And now that things are on the rocks because Carney's such a poor negotiator, and the ideological extremists in Ottawa have let ideology prevail over practical reality, Minister Hodgson, federal minister, announced last week that they have a plan. They have a plan for Canada to get leverage in their negotiations with the United States under CUSMA. And that plan is to leverage Alberta's oil industry, our energy industry. So,
well, they came out with a statement saying they're going to leverage the oil industry, and then they came out with a contradictory statement saying that they weren't going to leverage it. Which one is it? And this keeps happening, whether it was Iran, whether it was a bunch of other political issues that came up. In the one subject, they released 4 different statements. This is just flood the zone with lies, and then people won't know what's really going on. And when they're asked a question, they can just point to A, B, or C statement that they put out, whatever one works best for them in that moment.
But I could also point at the fact that they maybe really don't have any idea what they're doing or what the best strategy is or plan is. So
my head exploded. I tweeted about this. The irony, they're saying, oh, Alberta can't separate because you'll be so vulnerable to the United States. You'll have no leverage in your negotiations. Canada's now looking for negotiations as a nation, and they can't find any leverage but for Alberta's well. So
Okay,
it just demonstrates.
You can leave it there. Yeah, Alberta is the one supplying Canada with all their wealth. So when they point at their good economic points, they're basically saying, giving credits to Alberta, but they never want to name Alberta as that's the reason why they're having any kind of economic success, and they're having very little outside of Alberta.
because then they'd be proving, even to their lemming voter base, that Alberta can stand by itself and can be successful when independent.
Alberta
will be successful.
Alberta has a ton of negotiating leverage, whether it's with the United States, but we're ideologically matched right now with a president that we can make good long-term deals with. But we have a ton of negotiating leverage over British Columbia after we vote for independence. If they don't give us access to the coast, they're going to find out real quick. They're going to want to renegotiate and allow us to have access to that coast because the oil taps are going to be turned off along with access to the rest of Canada. So I truly believe we'll get quicker access to the coast as an independent nation than we would trying to negotiate with the federal government.
But also from the rising of the Alberta Army of Independence, ouch, saying, what an awesome event at the Whistle Stop Cafe, May 2nd, 2026. Listen to the great speech Chris gave at the event. What a great guy. Thank you to Chris Scott for all he's doing for the cause. And he rocks as well. Yes.
And this looked like a great event. This is the one where I seen John talking to Albertans talking to Freedom Money. So absolutely fantastic little event. I wish I was there.
Oh, it looks sunny now.
Answer is barbecue. That's pretty much it. I literally lured everybody here just to sell you brisket. So thank you for coming, and we'll see you tomorrow. Oh, Shane said no. So this is the first kind of semi-formal, bigger than normal Let's Talk Alberta fundraising event. Now, some of you might not know what Let's Talk Alberta is. Let's Talk Alberta, which is about to become the Let's Talk Alberta Foundation, by the way, is a group of patriotic, concerned Albertans.
Okay, and you can leave it there, and it's great. He's going to start doing a series of outdoor events like this. John talking to Alberta said he's having a real trouble now because he used to go around interviewing people, but he's got too many events to choose from, which is great. But
that is a great thing.
Yeah.
That's a great problem to have. Okay, so now we'll get it back into comments, and then we'll go actually into Alberta politics.
Yeah.
That I messed up. Sean says dialectical materialism was mainstreamed as Leninism when Lenin wrote a series of short political booklets as Marxism. Marx actually only wrote the first Capital. The others by Engels were the same as Manifesto. Yes, but we're again trying to get into the weeds of philosophy. Funnily enough, I studied philosophy and political science. Whatever. we mean dialectical in the terms of debate. So in debate, usually you're trying to win an argument when you're debating. However, once you start using a dialectical technique, you're actually trying to get to a deeper truth within the debate.
You're getting way too deep.
Well, because Sean was getting deep.
It's going over my head, the whole thing.
You like debates. You should know this.
But I'm not very smart.
I mean, yeah, you have a point. Harmony says...
Thanks, Nat. Thanks.
Harmony says, nice, Jess. Gift to Nat and the guy, the Western Standard. Yes, and thank you so much as well.
Yeah, that you don't have no many times because I'm the one that gathers all the stories for the show. I gather about 50 stories for the show. How many times I've clicked into Western Standard and couldn't read the article?
Yes, so thank you. We really do appreciate it again. Bradley Wilcox says, Alberta is gone. This is our time to shine and push forward no matter what. Exactly.
Absolutely.
And use as many strategies as you can as well.
Listen, I talk about Pierre Poilievre all the time, and I like a lot of what he's pitching, but he never took off the gloves. When it was his campaign season, he didn't do international interviews. He did it at the point he already lost. It's our time as Alberta independents to take off the gloves. The federal government doesn't expect us to raise the voice at the same time Quebec's going to raise theirs. They think Quebecers hate Albertans and Albertans hate Quebecers. If we can kind of come together, not in a political sense, but raising a national conversation, it's going to take the federal government by surprise. And that's how we take off the gloves here.
Glenn Gunn says, free Albertans aren't either, Sean. We are dreamers, workers, and those that say, let's get her done, because we do. Exactly, you do. And you've just proven it today once again, and I'm sure you will prove it again on October 19th. And more importantly, as the campaign season starts and goes ahead as well. Hold on. Troglodyte says, have you gotten a hold of Dallas Brody to interview? Love that woman. I will just say, can't confirm nor deny. Just wait. Wait a few days and we'll see. Albert Twitch says, watch the property markets plummet along the coast as all of the Chinese investment abandons an uncertain market. Well, the thing is, they might be actually benefiting from that. We have seen, and we've shown on the show before, the documents that from the First Nations making or wanting to make agreements with the Chinese, I'm going to say, but Chinese Communist Party on resources.
Yeah. And I will say one other thing about Dallas Brody. A lot of conservatives within British Columbia are now trying to put on the Dallas Brody skin suit.
Yes.
And it's a damn shame because a lot
Meaning from the Conservative
Conservative Party, they want to take Brody's policies because she was standing up hard against a lot of these things, whether it was protecting private property or not giving land acknowledgements or going against transgender surgeries for children as well. All these conservatives helped vote these policies in this magical little uniparty that was happening. Yeah. They just went along to get along. And there wasn't too many people in BC. BC is where we're originally from, or where I'm originally from.
Where I lived for 13 years.
It was a damn shame how many conservatives just voted for liberal policies, and that's how BC was destroyed.
Go along to get along and then cower in the corner. And once you see someone standing up, oh, those are our ideas. Those are actually good ideas. We're going to take them up, take her up on it.
And we know that because we worked with Billboard Chris a lot, and the amount of conservatives now they're wanting to get on the Billboard Chris train. Although I don't like his take on Alberta independence. Yeah. When it came to a lot of other crucial issues, conservatives just wouldn't stand next to him.
No. Glenn Gunn says, who cares about mainland BC owned by the others? Faye19 says, it was awesome to be a part of this movement. Very happy with today's events. Let's go, Alberta. Much work yet to be done. Let's go. Fully agree with that as well.
Absolutely.
Albert Twitch says, let's go. Yes. Glenn Gunn says, well said, Faye. And Primors 007 says, stupid Quebec will only live when the cash cow leaves. When the milk turns sour, the feeding stops.
Listen, I don't care what they do politically in Quebec. I just want the people that want independence in Quebec to start raising their voices now. It's going to help us immensely here in Alberta. There is a lot of ways it helps us as Quebec starts raising their voice and discontent. If they stay silent right now, it doesn't help us in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. Primers 007 says, hit the likes, folks. Yes, thank you so much. Glenn Gunn says, sorry, guy, Quebec won't give up the 13 billion plus we send them, but once Alberta leaves, they won't have that. So that's a motivation to become independent too.
Yeah, but you have to understand they're actually voting into power an independence political party. That means there's a ton of people behind them that don't care what the actual political party itself wants. The political party itself wants a better deal from Canada and just wants another handout. The people are the ones that can raise their voice in a grassroots movement to start a national conversation in the east coast of Canada as well.
Primors 007 says the federal government can't plug the hole because it is the hole. Very true. Justin GP says the more we talk about it in a positive light, the more exposure it gets from either side.
Absolutely.
True. And the more arguments that can come floating up to the surface as well that might impact or hit different demographics or different people that might be on the fence or might be on the no side, and might help them reframe the way they're thinking about it.
I think there's a lot of people across national Canada that would support Alberta independence if this was a normal thing in a normal conversation in online spaces as well. So when the federal government tries to frame something as this is a fringe movement, yet you have people in frickin' BC, Quebec, Alberta, Saskatchewan, the Northwest Territories, all talking about related issues to Alberta independence. It's very hard, and it just looks like fake news to everybody across Canada. A lot of people don't live in Alberta, so they don't know what's going on the ground, and they just accept what's spoon-fed to them. We need to get past that and let them know that this isn't just happening in Alberta.
True. Sean says to blend the two arguments into one, that's how a dialectical thinker gains power.
I don't want to blend the two arguments into one. I want to keep that Quebec independence movement in Quebec and the Alberta independence movement in Quebec, but to start a national conversation about why each are discontent, not to blend them together. Now, there is a couple arguments like immigration that's related within the two independence movements.
And general anger at the federal government as well.
Yeah, I want to use it to start a national conversation and not to have a political partnership.
Mm-hmm. Troglodyte says Quebec had the FLQ, Alberta never will.
And it's very interesting when you're looking at it because Alberta is coming from a decentralized movement, where Quebec's coming from a very centralized, even a political party that's supporting their independence movement.
True. Miss Altot says independence pressures coming at Ottawa from multiple directions, from different political stripes and cultures, is hard for people to ignore. That's the whole point, exactly. Yes. And you got it, Miss Altot. And you put it very, very concisely. So thank you for doing that. Sean says they want to pit the two against each other to make the federal government look reasonable. Exactly, Sean. And that's why, if we can go around their little tactics that they've been using for the longest time now, then helping each other, not in the way of joining it together, but in the way of let's distract the federal government on both sides so they can't do anything.
Well, they have two strategies.
Or they can try what they want to do.
They either want to pit the two movements against each other, or they want to silo the two movements and address one and then address the other with two different narratives, where if they're forced to address both at the same time, they don't have the arguments because the federal arguments are going to be in contradiction. Okay, let's go into Alberta politics if we can.
And I'll continue reading your comments after the next segment. Now we are actually going into Alberta politics. I'll press the right button this time.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And starting with Reminder is in quote, Pierre this morning in Toronto gets asked his thoughts on Carney, saying he isn't going to use our energy on critical minerals as leverage in trade negotiations. Pierre, if he doesn't want to use energy or critical minerals in these negotiations, what leverage does he have? He has his elbows.
Hi, Sheehan with CBC here in Toronto.
Hi, Sheehan.
A question for you. The Prime Minister has suggested Canada's energy will not be used as leverage in negotiations with the United States, and also questions further integrations in that sector at this time. Do you think energy development should be focused elsewhere?
So if energy and minerals are not going to be leveraged for Canada in these negotiations, what leverage does Mr. Carney claim to have? He's already made a bunch of unilateral concessions and got absolutely nothing in return except double the tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and lumber. And now he can't tell us what leverage we have, what demands he's making, what tariffs he wants to get removed, and when and if he will even get a deal at all. So it's all been an illusion with Mark Carney. Of course, our energy and minerals should be positive leverage in these negotiations. Let's be clear.
And again, Pierre Poilievre is carrying water for Alberta independence, even though he's against it. That's why when a national conversation comes up with not just about the issue of independence, but related issues, it forces politicians, whether they're liberal politicians or conservative politicians, to start taking stances. And they can't say they're against everything Alberta independence is for, because at his first principles, what Alberta independence stands for is a lot of the same issues that he stands for. So it puts a lot of these politicians in predicaments once we start that national conversation. That's why they don't want to see that happen.
We're never going to cut our American allies off of our energy or selling our resources. They buy twice as much as the rest of the world combined buys from Canada. But we can offer in the negotiations to build up our resources in a way that helps our continental security, that keeps both of us safe, strong, and rich. We have 10 of the 12 NATO minerals needed to fight a war. I was just yesterday at Port Coburn's refinery of cobalt, and where they refine cobalt and nickel.
Thanks for the talking points, Pierre. This is exactly what Alberta can do when it goes into negotiations with the United States.
Make enough cobalt there for 75,000 F-35 fighter jets, to put it into perspective. If that's not
okay,
leverage,
we can leave it there. And I will also say it's a great talking point for Alberta independence to say this is how we want to negotiate with the United States. This is not what Mark Carney is willing to do in negotiations.
True.
So
And
as
he's
much as he's against it, very often when he opens his mouth, he's helping Alberta independence.
Yes, thank you, PP. From CBC Watcher, quote, a new poll for CBC News has found a majority of respondents in Alberta are skeptical the memorandum of understanding between Alberta and Ottawa will result in a new pipeline being built. Well, no, S. Sherlock.
A new poll conducted for CBC News has found a majority of respondents in Alberta are skeptical the memorandum of understanding between Alberta and Ottawa will result in a new pipeline being built. And as Ted Henley reports, energy insiders say they're not surprised by the numbers.
And I really do think they're trying to build this narrative of, in the mainstream media, nobody believes Mark Carney is going to give a pipeline, and at the end, close to the vote, he's going to give a pipeline and natural resource contracts, and then they're going to say that we solved it. That's why I think they're building this narrative now. So when he gives it, it's going to be like, oh my God, look what he did. Yeah. Oh my God, you didn't solve any issues, and you put so many strings attached with those natural resource contracts, Carney.
For Albertans. That sentiment may not ring true for everyone in the province. It's been 5 months since Alberta and Ottawa finalized an MOU. It was all smiles at the signing of the energy deal supporting a pipeline, but the results of a poll commissioned by CBC News suggest that optimism is not shared by everyone.
I was surprised how few Albertans are confident that the MOU is going to provide the outcome that Albertans want.
According to the survey, 57% of respondents said they are not very or not at all confident the MOU will.
Okay, you can leave it there. And the question should have been, even if you do get a pipeline, is it going to really change things? Because there's even more strings attached, not just short-term strings, but long-term strings that increase over time. Mark Carney will either put the oil industry out of business or he'll federalize it and then access it himself.
Mm-hmm. And Marty of North says, and again, good talking points. Marty of North says, for once I agree with Dean. Once Canada joins the EU as part of the new world order, the immigration floodgates will be wide open. The Islamization of Canada will be reduced from 30 years to just 10. And Dean Blundell, this is because Dean Blundell said, before the end of the year, Canada will be part of the EU.
Well, I don't know if it's going to happen by the end of the year, but they're definitely creeping closer and closer. We had an interview today.
Mm-hmm. True. With Fergus Hodgson, with Fergus Hodgson, and we did speak about this. We've even made videos about the potential that the mainstream media continues to try to push, and more voices push within the, not just Liberals, but also the mainstream media about Canada joining the EU.
Yeah.
Or getting closer to the EU.
One of the interesting things he says is he doesn't think Mark Carney is actually as ideological as a lot of people think. He's willing to do whatever it takes to consolidate power. And this is why I think he's really trying to federalize natural resources and take a lot of that, the natural resources away from provinces, as well as take sovereignty away from provinces. This is what the 30 by 30 program is. This is what the land grabs are even within British Columbia. Mm-hmm. And once he has control of those natural resources, you're going to see he was never really opposed to accessing them. He was opposed to accessing them when he didn't have control over them.
Or for the benefit of Canadians.
Or not Canadians. He wants it to benefit for his globalist buddies.
No, I mean, he wasn't willing to access them for the benefit of Canadians.
Yeah.
He is for the globalist elites. and himself, which himself is a part of. Canada Proud says, quote, the new polling results show that Naheed Nenshi and the NDP would lose 8 seats in Alberta if an election were held today. New Alberta polling results suggest the UCP would win in a landslide.
Yeah, and let's make sure this is completely clear. Number one, yes, Danielle Smith is popular, but she's not quite this popular because although I like a lot of things she's doing, and she does help Alberta independence when she can, like when she lowered the signature count that we needed. Okay. She left the door open to Lukaszuk. So she's really walking a tightrope here, and I'm sympathetic to her position. That being said, the seat numbers are so high right now because people in Alberta independence are signing up en masse for the UCP to put pressure on Danielle Smith to make sure she puts that question on the October 19th ballot. That's why these numbers are so high.
But again, this might be the strategy that you were mentioning before with Danielle Smith and the UCP.
Well, that interview we showed earlier with Freedom Calendar Max and Mitch Sylvester, they were asking Mitch Sylvester, what's the next step? And he says to make sure this question gets on the ballot by putting massive pressure on Danielle Smith, by having people within the independence movement join the UCP. So
True. But now let's go back into your comments. Glenn Gunn says Quebec has no FLQ, long gone. And Troglodyte says they did during Trudy 1.0. Faye 19 says the exact count is 301,450,000. Absolutely every single signature counts, not to be rounded off. And again, as I understand, there may still be some in the mail that Canada Post is delayed on. Course. Troglodyte says, had. Glenn Gunn says, Alberta has many more cowboys and cowgirls. Ever mess with a true cowgirl? I'd rather mess with Bigfoot. Oh no, the Bigfoot thing, and the guy isn't here. He's coming though. Troglodyte says, lol, my sister was a barrel racer. I get it. I've always been curious, but I'm not brave enough. I used to be a dancer. Glenn Gunn says, because Glenn Gunn says, ever mess with a true cowgirl? I'd rather mess with Bigfoot.
And I will say something else. As Alberta voices its discontent and why it wants its independence, what that does for Quebec, it helps them out with conservative voters because conservative voters in Quebec will be sympathetic to a lot of things that are brought up in the national conversation from conservatives. And as Quebec starts raising their discontent and why they want independence, it really starts to shift liberal voters into planting seeds and thinking about independence.
Yeah. It becomes more of an acceptable position to hold.
Acceptable conversation to have in their own heads and in their own households.
Yes. Bradley Wilcox says, word on the street is that Keith Wilson destroyed Jason Kenney at the first debate.
Good to hear.
Obviously, I think anybody with a brain probably knows that, but good. Glenn Gunn says it will leak out, hopefully.
Well, just wait, because we reported this morning a little bit on the debate, and Jason Levine had some great insider information. The organization that threw the debate was actually directly connected to Jason Kenney.
He was one of the co-founders.
He's one of the co-founders.
So, of course.
So go figure.
It's a closed-door organization with Chatham House rules.
And I don't think there was anything going on behind closed doors. I literally think Keith Wilson had to make that concession on a closed door debate if he wanted to do an open source debate.
Maybe. DeBover says Keith is the best. Yes.
Yeah.
And Glenn Gunn says very well spoken. Troglodyte says, when your quiver is stocked with truth and the courage of your convictions, you are a juggernaut.
Yeah, and I will say Keith Wilson is absolutely level-headed in everything you want in a leader. And it's starting to become a lot more evident than it was during the canvassing season that we might need a leader right now. So we might need to reconsider
or at least a spokesperson if you want to change the way to frame it.
But a campaign is much different than canvassing. Sure. And there's going to be a tax coming that's going to try to divide us. Having a leader holds us together.
And I'll go over to RUMB Elite to just say hello to KP4U saying, good strategy, guy. I'd love to hit Ottawa with my left and my right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And both feet. Krista says, hello, dears. Alberta independence today was one for the books.
Absolutely.
And Krista says, while I was driving, I heard Jess's comment. Justin GP, sir, you're a real gentleman. Very, very true as well. And again, we are very grateful to Justin GP as well. Cindy Melnick says, Cindy Melnick says, exactly. Glenn Gunn asks Monty Python the Holy Grail. Yeah. Chocolate says the holy hand grenade of truth.
Well, and think about this. If Alberta and Quebec start talking about independence at the same time, starting a national conversation, it's very, very hard for the Federalists. I mean, they got the Conservatives and the Liberals Like they just reveal themselves as a uniparty if they try to fight off both sides at the same time.
Exactly. And Tal Talk says, howdy again, Nat and Guy. Howdy. Thank you for being here. Primorse 007 says, Nat, shots fired. Guy gets tagged. He said it. He said he's dumb. I love him, though, the way he is. Troglodyte says, I studied sawdust and sweat. Yeah, I didn't mean to bring up that, but like I was trying to consolidate what I was trying to say quickly for Sean, for Sean's questions on dialectic. Charlie Defoe, hello, says, I have lots of friends in Manitoba and they fear this vote. I can't blame them. The movement is just the beginning. No love for Liberals here, nor their fear tactics. We control our destiny.
Yeah, and if anybody knows people within Quebec, because I don't know a lot, and I'm just trying to start this national conversation that will be willing to interview, even if they're just regular citizens that support independence in the Quebec aspect, let me know, give me their email or something like that. I'm trying to reach out to people right now. I'm also trying to research on prominent content creators within Quebec that we might be able to interview as well, to interview them about Quebec independence and have them start and let them know we need you guys to start raising your voice right now.
Yeah, and right now might be a good chance for you as well.
Yeah.
Glenn Gunn says that's the one. That's the one I'm going to go on in Alberta. On Alberta Day, July 1st. Sorry, I can't read. Glenn Gunn says Manitoba is tough, Charlie. Glenn Gunn says the feds give 0 S's to you, no votes for them. Troglodyte says my family farmed in Manitoba near Portage La Prairie. So sad to see what it has become. A lot of family buried there.
Absolutely.
Tal Talk says it was well worth the trip to witness the historic turnover of the petition signatures today. It was a grand turnout with lots of great Alberta patriots attending.
Well, they had the DJ there. They had the billboard truck there. Every major content creator that was in Alberta was there. The flags, all the canvassers, or a large portion of the canvassers were there. Yes. Igor had a video. It was extremely hard to find parking.
So that's good. Sean says, Guy, you're from California. Just kidding. That's why he's a little off in the
That's why I'm a
head.
little kooky. I was born in Vancouver, Canada.
Yeah.
And
he has the worst combination, Vancouver, Canada, and California.
after my mother died, I moved down with my grandparents. So I was raised half and half.
California and Vancouver. Yeah, those are the two worst ones.
I know.
Troglodyte says Quebec will have to move out of Alberta's basement. LOL. I mean, if they want their self-determination, they continue to say they want. Don Adelac says, well said, Trog. Harmony says, I found that many Ontarians are more critical of Quebecers than Albertans. They seem to be jealous of what the federal government gives them.
Yeah.
And again, if the conversation becomes a national one, maybe everybody can voice their opinions. Because the main root of the issue, the main hole, as I don't remember who said it, is the federal government, is Canada.
Well, and let's just say this. We start a national conversation. The tangential or the related conversations coming up in Ottawa reflected to Alberta, reflected to Quebec. It's like setting the forest on fire. We don't know what conversations are going to arise in Ottawa, and that could really upset this stronghold liberal voter base. Conversations that might come up that sit them against each other. There might be add-on effects, second and third rank effects that really stir up the politics within national Canada as well, just by raising a national conversation about independence.
James B says, Alberta is leaving 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Troglodyte says, attack Carney PP. Thank you. Exactly. Doing our job for us. Glenn Gunn says, Quebec loves the money coming from Alberta.
And again, let's keep
He always answers while I'm reading another comment.
Again, let's keep Pierre Poilievre in there because he's actually talking against the federal government. If we replace him, the talk is Doug Ford or Jason Kenney. If we start a national conversation and Doug Ford and Jason Kenney are there, they're going to have a unified front. As long as Pierre Poilievre's there, he's going to continue to have to be that oppositional force, which I like.
Glenn Gunn says, Quebec loves the money coming from Alberta. It helped them fund their own private businesses. I worked with those that got the funding. They came to Alberta to do a provincial project. They are great people.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for
Well, and
letting
it's
us know.
very interesting. I've only recently started researching Quebec independence in depth. They have a completely different view of the financial situation. And They
Yes.
do math completely different.
They do French math.
I don't think the way that it's been pitched to them is actually honest. But that being said, I don't need to agree with them. I just need to raise them to raise their voice and us to raise our voice at the same time.
To distract and to confuse the federal government. James B says, not enough, day late and dollar short as usual, Clowny. That's my way of thinking. But again, he's useful. he's a useful clown. PP is. Troglodyte says Albertans signed an MOI, a Memorandum of Independence. And that's the important one. Albert Twitch says Carney is the banking cartel's golden boy. He will, of course, act in lockstep with globalist policy, which will see us all disempowered and impoverished, and them continue to hold the power and the control that they already have, but more that they want to gain.
You're absolutely right. And that's why I think he wants to federalize natural resources in Canada. And he's starting to build the infrastructure, and it's very visible. We talk about it on the show all the time.
Yes. 30 by 30. Glengun says, very true. Glengun says, MOU is 20 years away and billions in loss to Alberta.
No, I think they're going to throw you something right before the election to say we fixed everything. And there's going to be so many strings attached. You're going to be hanging yourself if you don't vote to separate at that point.
Yes. And I think that's a good point to bring up to those that might be on the fence and explain why, even if the federal government cooperates by giving some sort of natural resource contract or some sort of goodie bag, as you call it, to right before independence, it's going to be more of the same. We've already seen how this works, and we've already seen what strings the federal government attaches and wants to further attach as well.
You have to go a step further. You have to say, well, let's take a look at history. What did Quebec want? They threw a goodie bag at Quebec, and then they said that we're going to fix the rest of the issues after the referendum, and they never got around to them. They actually started overstepping and taking some of their sovereignty away after. Whatever they offer you, it's a lie when it comes to the federal government, and we know that because of what happened to Quebec.
True. Unacceptable Fringe. Hello, thank you for being here. Derek says Alberta won bigly today. Yes,
Absolutely.
it did, but it will continue to as well.
Yeah, and thank you to everything you've done to this point.
Yes.
Freedom Honey has done to this point. All the other channels like John talking to Albertans or John. There's a lot of Johns
There's
in the
a lot
movement.
of Johns.
All the Johns are doing a great job.
Yes, and the Dereks and everybody else. But thank you in particular because, again, you are the loudest voice at this point. So thank you for continuing to push for independence.
Well, and PJ the Belt was out there as well, and he's a pretty loud voice, so I was glad to see him there.
That too. And Igor. James B says, Nenshi is a complete joke. Well, of course. James B says, Derek.
He's a useful idiot, Ninchi. So we want him there because if they replace him with somebody else, they're not going to be as useful to us. He helps independence.
We need his stupidity.
He helps
Nenshi's
independence with his stupidity, and every time he opens his mouth.
Exactly. So just let him continue to be stupid. He kind of looks like a frog.
With hair.
Nenshi with very little
and
hair.
glasses.
Yeah. James B says, yes, 301,000 is more than the Forever Communists got after you attempted to validate Darth Vader's and the Easter Bunny's signatures. Exactly. I mean, and that too. And that's a good point to bring up as well with the numbers there.
A couple more comments, and then we're going to go into Alberta Personalities, and it's a good one today.
Troglodyte says, awesome stream today, Derek. Yes, and we watched a little bit as well, so thank you so much for being there on the ground too.
Yeah.
Unacceptable French, or Derek says, I don't know if the world is ready for the mass influx of independence Alberta is about to show. And again, as we say, maybe not even just Alberta, like all the voices that could be rising for independence and sovereignty and pushing that conversation to the national and international stage, I would say.
Yeah, and it was great to see you on the ground there, and it's something new. We're content creators, and I haven't done something live on the ground. We've done groundwork where we've interviewed people, but nothing live. So fantastic job doing that. I hope to see more of that content coming up, especially with the summertime and a lot of these events coming up.
Yeah, the ones you spoke about too, that sound really interesting. The Change My Mind that you're planning with other content creators as well.
Well, and it helps start that national conversation because the Fringe does have an audience that goes Unacceptable Fringe that does go outside of Alberta as well. So it's fantastic.
Exactly. And Tal Talk says, good seeing you at the turnover today, Derek. Yes. James B says thousands are moving from all over Canada to join us to leave this mess.
Well, and that's an important thing. We need to lean into that because if you listen to what the PQ said in that interview with the Western Standard is the federal government flooded Quebec with a lot of people to vote in that election, and that's what swayed it in the end. We have to counteract that with this Quebec independence referendum. We're lucky that we're living Alberta independence referendum. We're lucky we're living at a time where hundreds of thousands of Canadians are fleeing the country every year. There's a possibility that we can sway them to move to Alberta to vote for independence and use the United States as a safety net.
The ones that do value what Alberta independence means and represents. I will just add that caveat there because the crazies.
That's what I literally said that.
Okay.
And you say that every time, and I say it every time.
Okay, I'm not listening to you.
I know you never listen to me. It's a shame.
Well, because you're from California.
You'd be a little smarter if you just listened.
Says the guy that never listens to me. Okay, let's go.
Feminism for you guys.
Shut up. Let's go to Alberta Personalities.
They need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
And starting with Igor, saying, quote, today, 12 days ago, I boarded an Air Canada flight, left Toronto, and moved to Alberta. Best decision I ever made. Alberta gave my family and business opportunities we never had in the East. Completely different mindset, stronger, freer, more driven. Alberta should be its own independent country.
And I brought this up for a reason, and we're going into campaign season. Places like Edmonton and Calgary are filled with immigrants. Igor can be a crucial resource because he has documented his entire story. His 150,000 subscribers, a large portion of those subscribers are actually immigrants. His wife's an immigrant as well. Utilize the people that we have that will be able to effectively communicate with these groups, especially in Calgary and Edmonton. So we're lucky to have Igor. Let's utilize him if he's willing to do it.
Yes. And hold on. And on Igor, because I thought the next one was the clip we showed in the morning, but it's not.
No.
But I will say his response to a lot of the attacks and the disgusting attacks, especially on his family, his wife, his business, all of that just shows how disgusting the other side is. And I'll continue to say that. And it's unconscionable. But his response now regarding him being a realtor and etc., I think was perfect. The video we showed earlier today.
We played a clip. He just leaned into it hard, and he's getting a lot of business from Alberta independence supporters. So he's using it against them. Fantastic on Igor.
Exactly.
Let's go into this next one.
But Igor also says, please don't replace Naheed Nenshi. He actually helps Alberta independence in a way you can't imagine. This isn't obvious, but it is true. He should remain the leader of the NDP.
And that's why I want to keep a lot of these leaders in place. Carney helps us out. Polyev helps us out. NDP Frog here helps us out. They all help us out, even though they're all against Alberta independence. They're pushing people to the voting booth. We just need to increase some of our strategies, and we're going to be in a very, very good place.
Yes.
And the fact that we've built such a strong movement with 35% support, we're in a better place than Brexit was in, than a lot of these other independence movements we're in. We also have a legal path to independence, which a lot of countries that have recently got independence in the last few decades, they actually didn't have a legal path, but they put it to a vote and were able to manage it anyway.
Back to your comments. Chocolate Knight says, signatures, but wait, there's more. Yes. Albert Twitch says, just weird that what YouTube tries to censor, or maybe not so weird. Are they trying to censor us? Probably. Rage Against Machine says, freedom will be ours, Republic of Alberta.
Yes.
Don Nedelec says, good to see you today, Derek. Yes. Albert Twitch says, common sense Canadians come out to Alberta. We'll salvage what good remains of our once great nation here.
Yeah.
And again, that's why the history argument doesn't work when they try to use it, when the Federalists, the National Canadians try to use it. Or even the Albertans that are against it. But we didn't fight in world wars to separate from Canada. This isn't the Canada your grandparents fought for. They'd be fighting for independence as well if they saw the mess that it's become.
Well, and we talked about that in our interview today, and he had a fantastic response.
James B says, yes, 100% the chats in all the lives are screwy. I've seen messages suddenly disappear from the chats. Fringe, Berta Proud here, etc. So there's more messages disappearing then. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, but I mean, again, expected.
Well, what we want
and we'll continue to be here.
What we want to do is keep moving forward, come up with strategies that are inside the box, outside of the box. Some of the strategies are going to cost money. Some won't cost anything, and we need to attack them from all sides. We need the national conversation. We need to go into Alberta and Calgary in a more traditional sense. We need to open up conversations on the ground. There's a lot that we need to do, and yeah, I forgot where I was going with that at the end.
Albert Twitch says, I wasn't listening to you. Albert Twitch says,
you never are, Nat. You never are.
I was checking out what was next. Albert Twitch says, once the throttle is off our economic engine, we'll need all the productive folk we can get. Yes, and I'm sure you'll get a lot more as well. Albert Twitch says, yeah, man, we must have some Canadian-flavored authoritarian influences in the chat. Yes. And again, as I always say, hello to our Fed minders that are probably watching us too. Thank you for being here as well. Hopefully you learned something. Rage Against Machine says, history in the making, wahoo.
Oh, yeah, and that's where I was kind of going with it. If they're deleting our chats, they're freaking deleting our chats. They're breaking windows on cars. They're going after Igor. What we need to do is focus, stay positive, consolidate together, and really get them on their back foot. If every time they do something to us, we're on their back foot and we react, and they're going to do another thing and another thing. And for the next 6 months, we're going to be on our back foot. We need to push back so they're on their back foot and then keep pushing until we get independence.
Troglodyte says, the cinder of a once great country is still burning in the hearts of Albertans. It just needs a little wind and some straw.
Yes.
And Alberta has plenty of it. Now Alberta has plenty of it. Roger Arsenault says, I think the pleb is from Quebec.
Oh, that would be interesting. Oh, but I don't know if he's going to come out. It'd be interesting. I'll reach out. Okay. I didn't think about that, and I don't know. He looks Quebecian though, doesn't he?
Alba Twitch says, yeah, buddy. And
if he could get the conversation going in Quebec, that would be freaking interesting.
Forshank says, thanks to everyone who did their part.
I think he's a nationalist though, so I don't know. I'm going to reach out anyway. It's not going to hurt.
Spider-Man says, let's go Alberta. Yes. And also says, hello there, buddy. Still looking for a place in Alberta ASAP. Hopefully the ones moving there will support a strong Alberta, says Canadian Spider-Man. Rage Against Machine says, liberty is not a gift handed down by the powerful. It is a flame kept alive by ordinary people who refuse to bow their heads. Yeah. And again, Alberta has a lot of that straw that can be used to start the fire and continue the fire to grow. Troglodyte says, hi, Spidey. Damn, I want to follow you. And Rage says, I don't care what Carney offers. It will be a hollow gesture. And it will come with all the strings that we already know they come with.
Yeah.
Troglodyte says Carney is a born liar, like any central banker, says Alba Twitch. Exactly.
Well,
look who the words are coming from.
And we're going to go into Alberta's Canada. That's going to be our last section before we go to RUMBLE, because I want to end the stream by 7. The Fringe starts at 7. True. So some people will go over there. Some people will follow us to Rumble. But let's go into Alberta's Canada. That will be the last section on YouTube.
And we call it Alberta's Canada because Alberta is the only thing holding up Canada. And as soon as Alberta becomes independent, Canada will continue to fall down the elevator shaft.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
I realized the word shaft is weird. Sorry.
And then I made a dirty joke off it. That's why she was laughing when we came back.
City News Vancouver says, quote, BC Premier David Eby says he doesn't understand why Ottawa continues to push a new oil pipeline from Alberta while failing to include BC's softwood industry.
Just a bunch of contradictions going on in BC. BC Conservatives are coming around. Dallas Brody's been talking up for a long time. Their sovereignty's been taken away from them en masse right now. A lot of people have this independent sentiment within British Columbia because they are damn upset. We need to start a conversation with people in BC. We've already reached out, interviewed with Clyde. We have somebody else we're talking to later this week. The conversation is going well. Marty's also talking to Clyde out there. Yep. There's a lot of content creators that are upset that starting a national conversation that's with a related issue to Alberta independence. So this is
self-determination.
I think BC and Alberta were the first two places to really start the national conversation. We now need to start moving that conversation east.
But also with all the whole mess that's happening in BC with private property rights, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of people who would have usually been in the more federalist National Canada side might be now very concerned about their own private property. The people that won't be able to sell their houses, that don't know what's going to happen to their property titles, aren't sure what this means. See that the Conservatives aren't really even talking about that either. So a lot of those potential probably Liberal voters are now looking and saying, hey, this is actually now affecting me. This might change the way I think about what Canada is doing.
Well, a lot of the Conservatives that won't speak up about Alberta independence, when it comes to BC Conservatives, at least citizens and that people that are voting for the Conservative Party are very aware and very sympathetic to Alberta independence more than any other province I've noticed since I've started reaching out. Yeah. And I still have a lot of connections within BC where I talk to people and they are sympathetic to Alberta independence. And a lot of them are moving to Alberta as we speak.
And again, remember the insane portions of BC is basically just Victoria and Vancouver. The rest are sane, mostly freedom-minded people that just get silenced over and over and over again. Eventually, that dam will break.
But that also tells me something. They're able to sway the vote with 2 freaking cities because that's where all the population is. And that's why it's important to go into Calgary, go into Edmonton, inside Alberta.
With the right talking points and the right way to plant those seeds and shift those perspectives as well. But Mark Nixon says, Canadians feeling disconnected. Mark Carney pitching affordability is the best it's ever been in over a decade. And then the lived reality. He says he is making life more affordable, but no one is feeling it. So what is he actually doing?
Well, and I will say Mark Nixon's slowly coming around publicly to Alberta independence. He's posting about it here or there. He hasn't come out completely in support of it. But these national content creators that carry water for us and point out everything that Mark Carney and National Canada is doing wrong helps us, number one. But a lot of those people will eventually come around to Alberta independence, I believe. I think Mark Nixon, and I'm hoping he is one of them.
There does seem to be sort of like, at this stage anyway, a bit of a disconnect between sort of the Prime Minister's macro view of the economy and the things that he's trying to do to spur growth, and then the way people feel about the economy.
Yeah, well, I get to complain more because gas is $2.20 a liter out here. So
yeah, you're in the worst position. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and there is a disconnect, I think, too, between maybe what Canadians thought a Mark Carney government would be in terms of like spending prudence and fiscal kind of management, and then the idea in this update, which is basically that there's an unexpected windfall of cash on Ottawa from oil prices, and it's all being spent sort of immediately, and that the resulting deficit reduction is very small, that there is no path to balance as far as the eye can see.
Positive.
That,
and you wonder why mainstream media has been talking up against Mark Carney on certain points. It's been happening a lot lately since he got a majority government. They want to shift that liberal voter base into different ways of thinking on different issues, because I believe Mark Carney is trying to federalize natural resources over the next few years. They want to slowly bring their voting bloc around to saying accessing natural resources is okay. Not right now, but once he has control of those federal resources, he wants to make sure his voting bloc is going to stick with him. I think that's what you see happening in the mainstream media right now. We can go to the next clip.
I won't even take my headphones off. Also from Mark Nixon and Rosemary Barton.
I might have pulled two by accident.
No, it's a different one.
Okay.
Rosemary Barton says, filled up her car yesterday and was stunned at the price of gas. She doesn't know how parents with kids are affording gas right now. It's out of control.
And again, this is the mainstream media, I think, kind of trying to shift the Overton window for the Liberals. So Liberal voters will eventually say, okay, resource extraction is okay. Not right now.
But
once independence is over and once Carney federalizes the natural resources, that's these shifts we're seeing. We've been showing little clips like this over the last few months.
But once Alberta leaves, not once independence is over.
Yeah, I filled up my car yesterday too and was kind of stunned. And I can't imagine how people who have, lots of kids or have to have a long commute to work, how they're dealing with things right now. I filled up my car yesterday too.
Well, I'm glad she's feeling it too. After advocating for everything she's advocated for. But
last clip, and then we'll go into some comments.
It's just a headline, but yeah. National Post says, quote, from letters, Sovereign Wealth Fund is a poor idea for a debt-ridden Canada.
And leave it up. The Sovereign Wealth Fund and the 30 by 30 program, mark my words, that's how he's going to federalize natural resources and take sovereignty away. Sovereign wealth funds are typically funded by natural resources. People think this is something that it's to funnel money to his globalist buddies. Yeah, maybe, but more likely there's a long-term strategy here, because we do see the 30 by 30 plan coming up at the exact same time. Neither of them are really activated yet. It's more of a long-term plan to federalize natural resources, I believe.
But which is also for his globalist buddies as well. I mean, it's just a more roundabout way to say it. But now I will go on to your comments, and hopefully we can finish before 7, so you can all head over to Unacceptable Fringe and go see Derek. Troglodyte says...
And RUMBLE. Some of us will follow us over there.
Some will go with us with RUMBLE. It'll be a quick one today. Troglodyte says, Canadian Spider-Man brought me to your stream. Eternal thanks. And thank you so much, Canadian Spider-Man. And to you, Troglodyte, as well, for being here. Rage Against Machine says the more people streaming this, the better. Troglodyte says he is an unacceptable French now. But Twitch says, welcome aboard, Igor. Yes. And
and I'm going to say something else. We're starting to get access to a few national personalities outside of Alberta. If people can retweet those, restream those, it starts a national conversation. If it gets enough momentum within the algorithm, it will push it out into national Canada, because a lot of these personalities are from British Columbia, are from other provinces as well. This is how we start a national conversation, is when we interview somebody or other channels interview somebody that are even outside of Alberta, we retweet them, repost them, things like that.
Canadian Spider-Man says he's not wrong. Hey, and also says, cheers, buddy. I think it's a good night for a bonfire. Oh, I miss bonfires.
There's going to be a lot of good nights for bonfires with the weather heating up.
Troglodyte says, Spidey, light her up, buddy. Albert Twitch says, yeah, we didn't deviate from the great Canadian spirit. The globalist thralls took a hard left off a chasm. Yes. Troglodyte says, look up plebs, grab cringe palooza. Yvette DeVoe says, I think so far the pleb is a strong cardiovascular conservative supporter, sovereignty within Canada, but he's a wonderful man. Totally contact him.
Well, and there might be adjacent issues that I can talk to him about.
Sorry, I understand. It's not cardiovascular. It's conservative. A strong conservative supporter. There we go. That was, I'm guessing, a typo.
Yeah, and even if people don't support independence, there's related issues that they're sympathetic to what we're talking about that start a national conversation that actually help independence overall, because it puts strange pressure points on the federal government and starts conversations that the federal government can't control outside of Alberta. It's very easy for them to control the narrative when we're just talking inside Alberta.
Troglodyte says, if you're a PP fanboy, you aren't conservative. I agree. I agree.
You agree, but I'd say although he's against Alberta independence, he helps us by constantly pointing out the direction Canada is going. If we replace him, it's going to be not as good for Alberta independence. The same thing if we replace Ninchi. Both those characters are helping us out in strange ways.
Albert Twitch says, awesome. Yeah, the inland population of BC are great, down-to-earth people. Yes, they are. And we did have the opportunity to talk to a lot of them as well. And when we were starting with the whole Freedom Convoy thing, it was great to see how many people were actually going out there and going to the border and supporting. And also the side from Washington that came over. We told the story a while ago when we all sang both Canadian and American national anthems at the border before the Border Patrol came up and said, separate. But it was a good moment. It's somewhere there in our old videos. Justin JP says, Shaft, softwood, where are we headed with this, with all this? And then James B says, not far with softwood, sounds like a Carney problem. That is probably a Carney problem. BC. Troglodyte says, I lived in rural BC. The cities are commie shoot holes. Oh, yes, they are. We lived
that's where we're originally from.
We lived in the commie shoot holes, yeah. Albert Twitch says, there are a fair amount of those, but they're largely transient populations pretending to be hippies, and says commies, which for some reason side with their sworn enemies in the form of the feds. Yeah, true. Because they give them what they want just to have them. Albert Twitch says, broken people. Yes, they are. Troglodyte says, Rosemary Barton ate my buffet.
Well, and I also believe it's interesting. I'm just sitting here kind of thinking about it. If Alberta gets its independence and Quebec gets its independence, a lot of the Quebec citizens are going to be looking at Alberta, how we're organizing our government. And I think they're going to be saying, why aren't we doing what they're doing? And I think slowly over time, they're going to turn conservative.
Canadian Spider-Man says, they will blame the high gas prices on Trump. Of course they will.
Yeah, they're already doing that. Come on.
Canadian Spider-Man says, you are right. Many BC people who value freedom are moving to Alberta.
Yeah, and I know that because some of my friends are.
And because BC really seems like a lost hope. Again, we left years ago. We gained our own independence years ago and escaped the Trudeau regime because we were within BC and we were seeing what the cards were kind of handed over to.
And we got about 6 minutes left. So.
And I'm almost done. Troglodyte says, I married a Ukrainian. They love Canada. And I'm guessing they're very
culturally similar because they have a Christian fundamental base. And this is what you want with immigration, people with very similar moral bases. This is why the United States was lucky for so long with immigration coming from Mexico. And now a lot of other countries are using Mexico to get in there. So it's not that Christian or that Catholic fundamental base. But when you look at Europe, it's really... they're being invaded by Muslim countries, and it's like water and oil. The two cultures aren't mixing because the moral foundational base is much different.
And they don't want to admit that. Wild Rose Republic says, I was there February 15th, 2022. I was at the border at Surrey to Washington State. I was on the military truck that showed up for a bit. We probably saw you. You're probably in our video.
You might be in our video.
You might be in our video from when we went down there. We have 2 or 3 videos. From when
we have a video... we put our old videos from our other channel on this one in our...
Because our other channel was our original channel. We turned it into the Spanish channel when we moved to Mexico. All our old videos are in a playlist on this channel now as well called All Our Old Videos. So you can go find it there. It's one of the first ones.
It's one of the first ones, and we put them from oldest to newest. And we started making content about 4 years ago. And we did it during that...
The the Freedom Convoy, and at the beginnings of the Freedom Convoy as well within BC. So yes, you probably, and I remember that military truck, and I remember like you just brought me back to that point. So yeah, you're probably there. James B says, to these people, Trump is the reason behind everything negative in the world: floods, landslides, earthquakes. Because they don't have proper reasoning skills.
Yeah, but this is why we need a national conversation of Quebec and Alberta both talking about why we're discontent, because none of us are saying Trump. We're all saying the federal freaking government.
Yes.
That puts the federal government in a very tough situation, because it's not just the far right that's saying it, because that's how they're going to try to pin the movement of Alberta, but it's also the left within Quebec as well.
And you heard
nobody's blaming Trump in these movements.
Yeah, and you heard it from Paul there, from the clip we played 7 months ago when he talked to Western Standard. He literally says it's the federal government and they're the ones that have cheated and they're the ones that haven't let us become independent. So there it is. Wild Rose asks, I'm going to check, is it all here? Yes, it is a playlist called All Our Old Videos. You can cringe at my voice, at how we sound, at how awkward we were, but yes, it's there.
Those first 2 videos, we went there and we filmed. I don't think we went on camera because we were scared to be on camera, so we did voiceovers when we got home.
Yes.
We tried to film us on camera, but we got too nervous and we couldn't talk. Go figure.
But we filmed the important and nice moment. We've shown them during other live streams here recently as well.
Yeah.
But yeah. Wild Rose says, I'm going to look. Yes, now I kind of want to look and see if I can guess who you are. Again, it's a bunch of B-roll, so you might actually be there. And we did film that military truck quite a few times.
Well, there's a bunch of other freedom causes that were happening in British Columbia. In our old videos, you can kind of see that we talked about.
Yes. James B says, yeah, tough to debate truth. Exactly. And they'll continue to try, but they can't because they don't have the proper arguments, because they're against truth and freedom and independence and sovereignty and liberty.
Okay. And we're going to head over to
RUMBLE.
RUMBLE. Hopefully we see some of you over there, but the Fringe is starting his show now. Some of you go over there, help support him. I'm sure he's going to have a big talk.
Yes.
He was on the ground today, so he's going to have a very interesting perspective.
And thank you so much for stopping by as well.
Yeah.
Well, yes, we'll see you over at RUMBLE. You can find our username down here. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow at 12 p.m. Again, we do 2 shows a day. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. It really helps us out. And there's a 30-second wait screen, and then we'll pop over on RUMBLE. Thank you so much, and have a great night. Today was a historic day.
Let's get ready to